Okay, Sith Lord, take us away.
I know. I just want to be comforted. I just want to be comforted today. Oh, this is like this topic. We're going to talk about pressured versus unpressured technical training. And to me, like, it's such a passionate topic for me.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with some of the debauchery that I've seen go on.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, in just a very short explanation, I believe all players need to focus on unpressured technical training at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then the natural pressure comes in when you do small sided games or larger sided games, whatever the case may be, right? But I'm talking unpressured to allow players to fix body position, like foot position, receiving touch, first touch, directional changes, dribbling skills. Like when you're teaching dribbling skills, some kids just trip over the ball right away trying to learn the skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. And that's fine. That's a part of the learning process. And, when you do it unpressured, they have moments to where they can see progress, feel confident, and then can they continue the good habits during the pressured moments. And I remembered a conversation that you and I had, what feels like moons ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned there's a way to bring pressure into the situation without like physical pressure.
Right.
Yeah. Without using a defender. And you're like, time on the clock, number of passes, And I was like, it was kind of eye-opening to me. Even though I felt like I was doing it a little bit natural, I never really thought about it in a clear, conscious thought.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
And it made
so
me...
like having races, you're working on dribbling, so you want to have, some races where now, because you're competing against another group or you're competing against another person, that adds an element of pressure. But it's not someone coming to take the ball off you where you then don't get an opportunity to work on the technical aspect.
Yes.
Yeah, just an example.
Yeah. And I don't know. So like I have pretty hard stances on it, right? Like, I watched a coach who never does unpressured technical training. And I will give him credit. He talks about like, little nuanced things to fix the first touch or the pass or the, you know what I mean? But these kids are under gameplay pressure all the time, which I believe also helps in other areas, but they don't have time to fix their body mechanics. Right. And then I go and watch like videos of Barcelona or Man City or Arsenal. And, that's about the only three teams I'll watch. But, like I'll watch their training sessions and I'm watching professionals who get paid millions of dollars to play this game. And they have the most elite coaches and they're running patterns unpressured. They're, simulating patterns of play. They're working on their dribbling, whatever the case may be. They're finishing and all this stuff. And I'm like, if professionals are doing it, why are we not teaching kids to do it? Teaching kids in that way, I should say.
Sure. It's a big question. I think you can always say that the reason pros are working on things like patterns of play is because their generalized gameplay is at such a high level that they are now honing the way they play to, specifically beat a certain opponent. So working on specific patterns of play because you understand how somebody presses is, to me, that highest level of competition and training. I think when we talk about technique, to me, there's two different things. There's technique and then there's skill acquisition.
Yeah.
And I think technique and skill as terms are used interchangeably too often. For me, technique is the how you do it, right?
Right.
So when the ball's coming in at me, how do I control the ball? If it's coming in really quick, what do I have to do to get that ball under control with that first touch? The skill part of it is going to be, why am I doing it like this? Where do I need to go? What am I trying to achieve? All of the other stuff. So it's the game related decisions that need to be made to, and they inform my technique choice, as it were. And I think skill, they're very hand in hand. You can have great technique, but if you can't turn that technique into skill, then you're not going to go anywhere with it, because you're never going to be able to just play the game unopposed. At the same time, if you are constantly playing opposed, and so you understand, what you're trying to do in what situation, and where you want the ball to go, etc., but you don't have the technical mastery to be able to do what your mind is telling you, then again, you're not going to be effective. It reminds me of a saying I saw from Arsene Wenger, Papa Wenger, where he said the technical aspects of football are like vocabulary to a writer. Like, in your mind, you can create these things, but if you don't have the vocabulary, and in football terms, if you don't have the technique, then everything that you're seeing in your mind and your great expression and imagination, you're not going to be able to portray to somebody else. So nobody's going to be able to see the great things that you're thinking if you're not able to deliver the message, if you're not able to, pass a complete the thing that you have in your mind. He does a much better way of explaining that than me. Much better job, shall I say, of explaining that than me. But I when I heard that, it was like, it just resonated so much with me, because it's true. We want players to be creative. We want players to express themselves. But if they don't have that technical foundation to be able to do it, they can see the game, they can think about the game, they can have the best ideas, but not be able to execute anything.
Right.
So yeah, I'm talking too much. I'm gonna let you go.
No, you're good. It's great information. So I go back to like when I was a player and like how I trained, and I'm not saying it was the best way to train, but it's just it relates to me as a coach, right? Like we kind of tend to, mirror how we were trained, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of like unpressured, no defender, technical work, right? And then we would incorporate like races, time, number of passes, etc. Right? Because if your technique's good and you're in a passing drill and you're like, okay, first to 50, you know what I mean? You talk about the touch, the precision of the pass, and the weight of the pass, right? All that increases, and then like I feel as a coach, if you do all of this, unpressured technical training in a session, you have to end, or you should end, maybe not have to, but you should end a majority of the time with at least a small-sided game, right?
Right.
So like when I do passing patterns, right? Like I'm trying to teach the players like an up-back switch pattern go through, okay, with an overlapping run. Okay, cool. We're just working that pattern. We're working on technique. We're working on timing, visual recognition, all of it. Okay. All right, great. So we did this pattern for 30 minutes, right? And obviously we changed it a little bit. It's not one pattern, but like the principles are there. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go into gameplay. Can you pull that pattern out? right? Can you look for the triggers, at least make your run? And then, cool, now we're starting to see the timing, the space awareness, the movement. Now what'll help you execute it is your technical precision, right?
Right.
Okay. Will it change? Absolutely, because all of a sudden now you got defenders closing you got defenders closing the angle, and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's like where I lead into as a coach, right? We're going to do patterns, we're going to do dribbling and finishing. How do we incorporate that into gameplay to end the session? Can you pull it out?
Yeah. So I don't see patterns so much as a technical thing. I mean, I get it. You're talking about, timing of movement, when to check, where, how you position your body to get that first touch to allow you to go somewhere, how you execute the pass. Is it going to be a chipped pass? Is it going to be on the ground? And just kind of working through the different how we do this. So I understand that element kind of technically. But for me, to be effective in the passing pattern, it's going to be about solving problems.
Yep.
And the problems occur when there's pressure. So the question I ask is it better to work on the isolated pass? So again, let's say that we're talking about, like you said, an up back switch into a wide player, right? Yep. Is it better to work on how the play would receive the ball as the isolated technical, going in both directions, and then put them, and let's say we want to work on a driven pass so we can get the ball somewhere quickly. So we might have, some kind of a square, passing around the square kind of thing where we're, check in, shoulder, scanning, receive on that back foot, and then drive the ball into the next person, which isn't a game pattern, but I guess it's a pattern on its own. And then put them into a pressured game where they're now having to deal with the decision making. And the reason I say this is because a lot of the data, a lot of the research kind of shows, and this is kind of research of academy level football in England, shows that when you add pressure, whether it's a time constraint, whether it's physical pressure, that kind of thing, then you improve the decision-making skills, but then those decision-making skills, they're more deeply embedded. So basically in the study, they measure this, these metrics, decision-making, cognitive stress, etc. And then they come back 6 weeks later and they have control groups, and they find that not only has the pressure group improved in their performance in a greater magnitude than the control group, they're also able to retain that information and those abilities for a much longer period of time as well. So my question is, technique, yes. I think at younger ages, yes, for sure, because they don't necessarily have the that foundational base to be able to do a lot of the things, and they need to learn those kinds of things. But once we get to a certain age, I think we should let the gameplay almost teach them how to play. If that makes sense.
Yes, I agree. And you said something that kind of really caught my attention, was like younger ages, unpressured, right? Mm-hmm. And I really believe that, because if we're doing our job as coaches to technically develop players at younger ages, and I'm not talking like the wee ones, you know what I mean? Because we agree like the wee ones should be ball mastery, love of the ball, right? But we're talking like that 9 through probably 12 range, right?
Okay.
In my opinion, like 9 through 12, like unpressured there, and then like when you're finally going into like 11s, maybe. Like, yeah, we should have a very good foundation of like body position, foot position, right? Striking, how to strike a ball, how to, drive a ball, all this stuff, right? So the 9 through like 12 range, we're really focused on unpressured technical development, and then like at parts let the game teach you. But then like when we're hitting, 12 and older, right? And when they're playing 11s, like you said, the game can teach you so much, right? It could teach you a lot. And I think you covered this pretty well, was like unpressured pattern play doesn't teach you decision making. Right?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it can. It can.
Yeah, it can.
If
but
you
not,
give right.
Not like up here, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah. So like it can teach you timing and recognition, right? Like if you're the 6 and I'm the 2, and you're receiving and opening your hips, that's like a trigger for me as a 2 to start attacking space, right?
Right.
Okay, so you're learning that aspect of decisions and timing, right?
I think you can also, if in your pattern, if you give a 6 3 options where we can either bounce the ball. So let's say ball comes from the right centre back into the 6. My options are I can bounce the ball into the fullback. I can open my hips facing my own goal and play into the opposite centre back. Or I can open my hips facing forward and play a switch of play into the opposite fullback.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 options. Now, based on my body mechanics and my body movement, I might be going in for a ball and the ball's played so that I have to face my own goal. So now my decision here is I'm going to receive and play opposite centre back. Or it might be the ball's slightly behind me. Can I quickly adjust my body to try to get my body facing forward so I can switch play? And so there's still some, like, you can add an element, a stronger element of decision making in there. But like you say, this is going to be based on one sole criteria, which is the standard of the pass. Whereas if you've got physical pressure, somebody that's in there putting pressure on you, they could press your ball side shoulder, your closed shoulder. They could, not press you at all. There's all kind of different things that can happen. That basically makes it far more complex. So sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to do it. Is like adding in choices, right? And that way, I mean, it's not just about the player receiving and passing. It's now also about like other players thinking, "Hey, I'm still engaged. Right. I could be the 6 trying to open to go to the 2 or the 7. What if I have a bad touch as a 6?
Exactly.
The 11 has to react. Oh, wait, whoops! They were supposed to open their hips, but they didn't. I better be engaged, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I still think that places a cognitive load and a cognitive stress on the players, because they're now playing to certain triggers, which means that they have to be aware of what's happening, which means they have to understand what's happening. When do I do X based on when this person's doing Y, right. And then there's a knock-on effect. The 6 opens their hips and plays into the centre back. So fullbacks now getting ready to go, but the centre back, their touch closes their body because the touch isn't good, and you can't have a fullback that's bombed on too early,
right?
If the centre back's then trapped. So, understanding when's the right time to go and what's my timing, it definitely kind of places a much greater cognitive load when you're kind of working and having to make your decisions based on what someone else is doing. So that connectedness is an important part of it for sure.